and I think we're recording. So, guys, welcome along to an episode of Martin's World here today, and I'm very pleased to have along with me a very good, old friend going back there a couple of years now. Clark French is also a cannabis activist in the UK who's been long fighting for the access to medical cannabis for patients in the UK. So, Clark, if you wouldn't mind, just introducing yourself a little bit, how, when and why you got into campaigning for medical cannabis.
Yeah, hello everyone. Well, thanks first of all, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate a chance to have a chat about cannabis. It is my passion in life, so it's good to be back after a little bit of a break, becoming a father. But yeah, I'm an MS patient, so the reason why I'm so adamant that cannabis needs to be available to people is because I need it. I'm a person that benefits from it every single day of my life. I have a lot of chronic pain, a lot of issues with my balance, with all sorts of things with my bladder that cannabis really reduces and helps a lot. So without it, I just wouldn't have a good quality of life. And with it, it's hard, but life is, much better quality. So, it is something that affects me every single day of my life. So it's something that I'm extremely passionate about. I was diagnosed with MS in 2010. Although I did have my first symptoms when I was just 14 years old. I didn't understand what they were. It's called limits, and it's like a shock down your neck, similar to if you hit your funny bone, but like down your spine, and it's agonizing. But I just assumed, oh, that must just happen sometimes if you move your neck too quick. But apparently, no, that's actually a sign that there's something going on. And that was one of my first symptoms of having MS when I was 14. So I've had it for a long time now, and yeah, cannabis is the only thing that really has worked. I've been into the movement ever since I first was diagnosed. So one of the first things I did when I was diagnosed was go, well, guess I better do something about this cannabis thing now. Got involved with then the Legalised Cannabis Alliance. I'm a founding member of Normal UK. Also founded one of the first UK cannabis social clubs, the Berkshire Cannabis Community. But I essentially decided that I didn't think that there was much movement there. I was really frustrated to be putting all this effort in and for nobody to be listening. So I decided that I needed to step aside from that movement and see the separate issue of medical cannabis, not to lump them in together, but to say, this is a separate issue. Although they both have their merits for sure, we can win this battle. So that's what I embarked on in 2014 to found the United Patients Alliance.
Okay, perfect. And so in 2010, when you were first diagnosed, how was it that you found out about cannabis? Was there somebody told you, or maybe your doctor?
Well, actually, it is also a bit tragic, but my upbringing was that I have two parents, my mum and my stepfather, who both had MS, and my stepfather had like quite severe MS, and he used to medicate. He didn't want it to be around me, but he got so severely disabled that in the end he actually just had to medicate in the garage. And being a kid, I could go into the garage whenever I liked. So I caught him smoking cannabis. The smell of cannabis still reminds me of him. Unfortunately, he did pass away when I was 11, which I'm not sure I'll ever get over, to be honest with you. But he taught me a lot about cannabis. And so as soon as I knew that I had it myself, I was like, well, that's what I'm going to do. I've seen it work for somebody that has this illness, so inevitably it's going to see if it helps me. And to be fair, I liked cannabis anyway. When it came to university, if I was out drinking all night, couldn't get to my lectures, couldn't do my work. If I would smoke cannabis at the weekends with my friends, well, actually we'd have really interesting conversations about what we're studying and like all these different ideas around it. And my work was better because of it. So I always preferred cannabis anyway, but when it came to being ill, really noticed the difference just from the pain levels. You can't, if you're in a load of pain and then suddenly you have something and then you're not in a load of pain anymore, it's pretty obvious what's going on. And it really hit, I'd seen it work for my stepdad, but then when it works for you, you're just like, whoa.
Yeah, okay. So
it still astounds me to this day, 10 years on, and I'm still like, wow, it really works so well. Like I can be on the floor with a 10 out of 10 migraine, can smoke a joint and then I can get up and I can make myself a cup of tea and I've still got a headache, but my day isn't completely ruined. And it still astounds me every day how much and how well it works.
Yeah, I think as people say, it takes that 10 pain down to something where maybe in a 2 and a 3, but it allows you to go about your day where you can
even if it's a 10 and it goes to a 4 or a 5, that's still magic. That's still magic, because if you're on chronic pain, a 4 or a 5, you know, you can, that's kind of usual, you can manage that. But when it's at a 10, no, that's unmanageable. So like, just to bring it into that manageable level, just like it's completely life changing.
Yeah. And can I just ask there as well? I know your dad, you were saying he kind of hid away in the garage. Did you feel that he felt the stigma that was applied?
Yeah, he did. I mean, he also was very. He definitely felt the stigma. He definitely didn't broadcast it out to the world that he was doing that. At the end of it, he was a nuclear physicist working on atomic energy in the research and development for UKAEA. So he was a very, very clever, very, very intelligent man. But he had his job reputation to worry about.
Yeah.
So he couldn't be open and honest about it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And he did try and hide it away a bit, but yeah, you know, he couldn't hide. He got so ill that he couldn't even use his hands. So he had to, in the end, he just get delivered like big bags of joints, like a big bag with like 20 pre-rolled joints in that somebody must have helped him and rolled them for him and then given them to him. Then he just used to stick them in this little like pipe, in this little like arm with a hole in it, and then just puff like that, because all he could do was use his neck. But it was so, this is the thing, like a man who can only use his neck is ensuring that he can access and take this cannabis that was helping him. So I could, you know, I knew that he was intelligent. I knew that he wouldn't have wasted effort on something that wasn't working.
Yeah.
And you could see the difference to him as well, because, you know, he was a very, very hard worker, and he'd come home from work and he'd be knackered, and then he would go and medicate, and then he would be back in the room. Like, you could talk to him, he'd be interested in what's going on, he'd ask you more questions. Like, he just wasn't completely tired all the time.
But it sounds like it enabled him to have a proper relationship with you, because if he wasn't able to have that relief, he'd be at that 10 level where he can't focus on, oh, how was Clark Junior's day, you know? Like, as a father, I'd imagine like that's just like a priceless thing for a plan to enable you to do. I wanted to ask then, I suppose, you being a recently new father, and congratulations on that as well.
Thank you.
Things are a lot different back then for your dad, and when he had to hide it away. And I know you've your own child. How do you foresee that with yourself and medicating now? Like, it's not this taboo thing anymore.
It's not, but it's not as it was. And of course, we've come a long way, but it still is not where it needs to be. And there is still potential problems that I could face. And, you know, ultimately, I have had to adapt my life in a way in which I wouldn't have had to if it wasn't for prohibition. But for example, I don't actually live with my son at the moment. He lives very close to me, but I have to have a separate house that I go to where I can medicate and I can have my medicine. And none of it is where he is, because I just wouldn't want that.
Yeah,
you know?
you almost treat it like a loaded gun that's like go off, like, just because of the silly prohibition that exists.
It's ridiculous, but
in reality,
it is the way it is, and it's what I have to do to protect my son.
Yeah, I've been kind of warned in that situation as well. Like, I have 2 daughters myself, and I have to take precautions here to enable myself to go about my activism, but also not be fearful that they be taken away from me. So I have a very good relationship with their mother, and you know, we've ensured there that we won't be separated anyway. But it is something that looms through your mind all the time, like that the authority.
Yeah, it is, and it's really wrong, because you just want to get on with being a dad and you know, enjoying life, and actually, like, you know, because it's so precious. All these he's like 5 months old now, so every moment is so like precious and amazing. I'm like, it's
I can attest to, like, cherish them every single second, cherish it, because I have a 13-year-old daughter now, and it feels like only yesterday that I was holding her as a small little baby in my hands, like, and every one of those moments are precious, like. And that's what kills me over the years, having to do things like going to court and stuff like this for my cannabis possession. And even my work in activism, like I would spend many time I spent long hours on online and meetings and doing these stuff, like, but all of that was time that I sacrificed, that I could have been spending with my kids and things, but I sacrificed it to go and to campaign there. And also, like, I see that as a bit of kind of a role model for my kids too, you know. Go give yourself to whatever it is that you're passionate about. So while it is a sacrifice that I'm taking time away from them, it's also setting an example to show my kids, like, you know, don't be afraid to stand up for your beliefs, really, like, and to put yourself out there for righteous causes when you see fit, you know. So,
and really, isn't it the best example? Really, I think, is to just say and show that all you're trying to do is make the world that little bit better than you found it.
Yeah,
you know, that is all it really comes down to, isn't it? That's what we're trying to do with all this stuff, all of this, all the broader context and everything. That's all everybody wants, is just that world to be a little bit easier for everybody in it.
Yeah, that's it. Just to make life that bit easier, allow patients access to something that's going to give them a better quality of life. Like, my argument for a long time was the recreational side of it, and like yourself, I seen a benefit to only arguing for the medical cannabis, because it seemed like a much more achievable goal.
Yeah.
And even in Ireland, we've actually achieved it. Now we have medical cannabis here, much like the UK, except it's a bit different. You can get it in pharmacies. Our patients who have licenses have to leave Ireland, go to a pharmacy in the Transvaal in The Hague, or maybe even to Spain. I think some patients possibly go to. But it's a bit backwards. Like, I've two daughters, as I say, and one of the very reasons I want to do this is because I don't want these drug dealers to be out there on the streets where my kids are in danger of being recruited into the trade, you know, or be sold substandard products and all of this stuff. Like, in our Gardaí or our cops are much more inefficient here because they waste time on non-violent drug consumers like myself. It's a bit ridiculous. But I'll jump on to the next question there after you, Clark. It's just with the UPA. When did that come about, United Patients Alliance, and how did you come about setting that up?
So it came out of a lot. There was many different reasons why I decided to found the UPA. I couldn't possibly go into all of them because we wouldn't have the time. But the main reason was simply because I was so frustrated with not being heard. When I was the medical director for Normal UK, so I'm founding member of Normal UK, and we all campaigned for cannabis to be regulated, right? But my story wasn't being heard. The patient's story wasn't being heard. It was being drowned out by this. Well, you support wider legalization. Like Peter Hitchens, for example, went to a talk with Peter Hitchens, and he was so adamant that the only reason why we weren't getting medical was because we'd lumped it in with recreational. And I'm like, well, I hate the man, to be honest with you. I couldn't think of a worse role model and a worse person to think, but hang on a minute, he is our enemy, and maybe we should listen to what he's saying, and maybe we should say, hang on a minute, well, if we can win medical and we can get patients legal cannabis in their hands now, well, that's a step in the right direction. Like, why should sick people have to wait? I don't think it's right for sick people to have to wait. I don't think it's right that anybody should be criminalized for having any drug, to be frank. But when it comes to medical necessity, when it comes to suffering, when it comes to daily suffering, I feel like that is a different issue. So when it comes to enjoying yourself, which is, in my opinion, still right, you shouldn't be criminalized for that, but it is a separate issue. So I thought, you know, we needed to separate. So 2014, I decided to do that. I had the idea of the UPA. I'd been over to America and California, spent time with Americans for Safe Access, learned a hell of a lot about medical cannabis, learned a hell of a lot about how they introduced it into California, tried thinking about how to use those lessons and put them into a UK context. I thought the only way forward is to have a medical cannabis campaign group. That's what we need. There isn't one right now. It doesn't exist. So this is what patients need. We need a banner to get behind, that all patients can get behind, to say this is a separate issue to recreational. Yeah. So that is what we did. We launched in Brighton in 2014 with Caroline Lucas. I actually moved to Brighton to do it. I used to live in Berkshire, and then I decided, well, not seeing any traction with my local MP, well, who's the best MP to help with this? Probably Green MP Caroline Lucas, known for her very liberal and forward-thinking views, probably somebody that could support me. Moved down to Brighton to get that, and actually it was very serendipitous, because I moved down and 5 days later she was stood outside my local shop campaigning for the Green Party. I was like, oh, I've moved here to meet you, so this is great, isn't it? So yeah, it worked really well. And then
to take the move down there just for this, like, fair play.
it was, I couldn't really believe it. I was like, okay, well, this is obviously meant to be, so here I am, and I will get on with it. And then Professor David Nutt as well, so the previous chair of the ACMD, who was fired by the government for producing a report which they commissioned him to produce, which used the evidence to show that cannabis should be regulated, so they fired him. But he created drug science shortly afterwards, and is committed to providing independent scientific information around drugs. So he was a big influence on me, and yeah, he was a big support and came down to talk for us at a launch night and became a big part of the UPA. So yeah.
And I only just started listening to the drug policy science podcast there by Professor Nutt. It's very good. Really like the episodes he did on the ayahuasca treatment for the PTSD and the soldiers and stuff. Like, geez, powerful stuff. But
I think it's really interesting. I think it's very, very clear to say that, you know, cannabis is not the only medicinal plant that is currently prohibited. And I would personally hope to see more patient activism when it comes to all the other plants as well. I think that is one of the next big steps when it comes to the patient activism and campaigning.
Yeah, when it comes to these illegal drugs, really, it almost makes you put a tinfoil hat on when you look at the resurgence now of the research that's coming out to testify to the benefit of some of these illegal compounds, you know, like psilocybin mushrooms now being used in end-of-life anxiety in terminal cancer patients, you know, the ayahuasca, there's the ibogaine, all of these banned controlled substances, and they have tremendous therapeutic benefits, similar to cannabis, but they're all labeled as not having any benefits and being terrible for us. Like, it's all kind of backwards. Can I ask as well, Clark, I know I didn't send you on this question, but Mike Cutler, I was hoping to have met him back in 2014, and unfortunately his situation changed and deteriorated really quickly, but he was also a founding member with yourself back in the beginning, and he was cancer-free in July 2014 when was that your launch night in July 2014? Yeah. So like he was an amazing guy. Can you just tell me a little bit about him, if you don't mind?
No problem. Well, Mike is, or was, a co-founder of the United Patients Alliance. He was a big influence on it, and you know, he's still very dearly missed to this day, to be honest with you.
Sorry, man. Sorry, I hit it on him.
No, it's okay. It's all right. But yeah, he had a terminal diagnosis of lung cancer, and he took the oil, FICO or Rick Simpson oil, and he had a complete turnaround and got the all clear.
Yeah.
But unfortunately,
was it liver cancer he beat first time?
He had liver cancer, and then he got the all clear from that. But then unfortunately, a few months later, he got a diagnosis of terminal lung cancer, and it just took him within weeks. And then within 6 months of the UPA's launch, he was not with us anymore, and it was devastating for everybody.
It was, but even in that short space of time that he was working with you, like he done a tremendous work to get it on the map. I can remember.
He was amazing. He got it. He was one of the first patients to really go big time. He got it in all of the UK media. It was just everybody was talking about him. The Daily Mail ran a big article on him, and then all the other newspapers followed. And we're like, well, hang on a minute, we've got a positive news story in the Daily Mail about medical cannabis. Like, wow, Mike, you absolute legend.
Yeah, there was a lot.
Guy that he was, like, even despite everything he went through, all he wanted to do was share his story to help other people.
Yeah, and there's many people out there like Mike who sadly they don't get to share their story because even like your dad, you know, they have things to protect, family, jobs, and they don't get to share their story. So when someone does come forward and they do share that story, it's an incredibly powerful thing. I can remember not long after he passed, I actually played a tribute down in CIT to him, where we played the testimony video that he recorded with ourselves. And I don't think there was even a dry eye in the room that evening, like, because like we had an evening dedicated to medical cannabis, and that was a part of it. And it was just a very moving kind of piece that went on that evening. But I suppose just to move on into more happier times, I suppose, and sorry there for hitting on that.
No, that's okay. Mike's a great man. It is good. It's just sad at times to remember.
No, happy memories are happy tears, I'd say. What is your most memorable moment with the UPA over the time that you spent with them?
I think I couldn't just say just one, to be honest with you. There's quite a few. There's a few that stand out. I think firstly was just before the UPA launch, with UPA patron, then Drugs Minister Norman Baker. I got to go into the Home Office and tell my story as a medical cannabis patient. Nobody's ever done that before, apparently, so I was the first ever patient to do that, to a room full of civil servants from the Department of Health and from all sorts of, I can't remember quite where they were all from, but there was a room full of civil servants who all listened to what I had to say and all wanted to actually hear me. And it was such just a kind of changing moment of going, oh, okay, I'm not just flying on the streets like of Reading with flyers, or the streets of Brighton, like trying to just get public support. I'm actually right in the heart of where policy is made. Like, I'm with the drugs minister who is supporting me and who's written about, who subsequently now wrote about me in his book. So that, for me, that was, to see that was like a really big, it made it all worth it, because it is hard, it is tough to do everything. And it takes a toll on all of us that do it. And then to get that kind of nudge to say, yeah, you did a good job, was really, really rewarding. And then of course the launch night, and Mike Cutler's testimony on the launch night, and the room and the standing ovation that he got. All the feels. And then I think as well, the many times going in and out of Parliament, and the evolution from standing outside of Parliament with placards to going into the building, to then actually hosting events in the building that MPs were coming to learn about it, kind of thing. Like that whole evolution was amazing. And then recently, I think with Professor David Nutt and Drug Science, I've been helping to go on their education campaigns, where they've been going around and talking to different healthcare professionals about it. I went to BMA House, the British Medical Association house, with Professor David Nutt, to a room full of 200 specialists talking about medical cannabis. I'm like, wow, this has changed. I'm not just, hey, knocking on the door, please listen. I'm actually in the room saying, this is how cannabis works. This is how cannabis affects me. This was my pain levels before. This is my pain levels after. This is what, as patients, we need all of you to know. And I'm like, wow, this is actually, I'm doing something with my life that's actually worthwhile.
Yeah, that's powerful stuff. Like, as a grassroots activist, to be in there with the policymakers, with the specialists, and playing the role as an educator then at that point, because I think that's how we're going to have proper policies made, when they're not being made by people in suits who don't understand the complexities of the situation that medical cannabis patients find themselves in currently.
The patients are the experts at the end of the day. The patients are the ones that know this the best.
Yeah.
And there's lots of us that have been doing it for a long time, and we all know a lot more than a lot of specialists and a lot of people that have not been doing it for very long. So there's a wealth of knowledge there that it is our duty as activists and patient campaigners to try and impart on the medical profession. And that's all I've always wanted to do. And to get to do that with, one of my heroes, Professor David Nutt, was an incredible experience and very, very, very memorable. I've got a nice photo of me outside of BMA House. I'm like, yeah, this is real. This is happening. This is reality. Is that I'm now, medical cannabis is being talked about in BMA House. It's not like all this side. No, it's medical cannabis is real, it is legal, and some people can get it now. So now that crack is there. We just need to widen it and widen it and widen it to include more and more patients and more people that can benefit from it.
Can I ask, do I recall that when you got to attend that meeting in, is it Stormont? Is that the name of your Stormont? Is that your place? Or is that Northern Ireland, Stormont?
That's Northern Ireland.
Yeah, oh crap.
Yeah, in Parliament.
In Parliament,
Oh,
yeah.
in the Home Office. Oh, well, the Norman Baker was in the Home Office.
Yeah.
And then it was at Parliament for a lot of the other stuff, yeah.
Do I recall you got to bring in your cannabis vaporizer into Parliament, which or something? You had to put it through the.
Oh yeah, no, I smuggled it in. Yeah, I smuggled it in. Well, that was also the time that I met Theo Prothetis from Dragon's Den, and I had my vaporizer on me. I gave him the pitch of medical cannabis. This was before the law was changed. I gave him the pitch about medical cannabis and how if he really wanted to be ahead of the game, he could contact me at the United Patients Alliance, and we could discuss how he could have some, we could discuss it. And then I had he was like, oh, what do you do? I got my vaporizer and showed him. He was like, what, you've brought that in here? And that instantly put him off, to be honest with you. He was like, no, I'm out. But yeah, I had to, because ultimately it was, I take my vaporizer and a little pot of flour with me so that I can last the day and not wet myself and not be in too much pain and actually walk from place to place. And in Parliament, there are some chairs that you can borrow and stuff, but there's loads of stairs and not everywhere is lift accessible. So it wasn't built for disabled people, Parliament. And so I had to.
Fair enough. Can I ask, Clark, what is going on at the moment in the UK in terms of medical cannabis? I've seen there has been a few moves being made there recently with the announcement of the Cancard and other things like that. Can you tell me a little bit about it? And maybe
sometimes it seems, sorry, I'm just plugging my laptop in because it turns out I didn't plug it in. Okay. So I'm not going to die now. But yeah, it seems at sometimes that there's very little going on in terms of movement, but actually there's an awful lot going on in the UK right now. Firstly, Carly's amnesty has changed into Cancard. I think this is Carly's trying to there's a real problem that we have, that it is okay to have cannabis on you if you have the money to afford a private prescription, if you've got all these illnesses and ailments, but if you don't have that money, you're still a criminal. So Carly is trying to address this by talking to the Police Federation, talking to lots of organisations, including Labour and Conservative policymakers, to try and get the police to officially recognise this card called Cancard, which essentially would decriminalise anybody on that list that has a real medical condition that can't afford a private prescription.
I think they said 1.
And what Carly is going to be doing is having lots of, she's going to have lots of resources for patients to be, if there is any problems or anything, they can call the number, they can get legal support, they can get advice, they can get help. And it's really, basically is the biggest problem that we're facing in the UK right now, is this two-tier system, and it's directly trying to address this. And yes, I think it's got a really good capacity to help a lot of people. Yeah. But then there's also MedCan ID, which is an ID card for patients, so that do have their private prescriptions as well. So there's two card initiatives coming out at the same time. One for people that have the money to afford the private prescription, and one for people that don't. But again, that's great because we need both of those bases covered. We need that. So it's progress, and hopefully that will mean that in practice, patients can go and they can medicate and they can be out and they can have small amounts of cannabis on them and they won't suffer any consequences from the law. So, this could be huge. Yeah.
In terms of the costs, you're saying the costs for those private prescriptions are quite prohibitive for some patients. What would that cost range from? So if you're a typical patient, so maybe someone like yourself,
well,
what would it cost you?
It varies from place to place. I haven't had a quote recently, but when I did, it was out of my price range, so I didn't go for it. But I know that Project 2021, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, is also subsidising some patients. So yeah. I believe that you can get a through Project 2021, you can get a consultation for around 50, and then I think you can get around an ounce of flour, 28 grams of flour, for about 150 now through 2021.
Yeah.
But obviously that's still out of the price range of some people. It's slightly cheaper than the black market, but got to be honest, most stuff on the black market is better than the current stuff, the current quality meds that's coming in through like Bedrocan or whatever. Like Bedrocan's terrible. Got to be honest.
I've heard that they've only the one sativa type strain, that the quality isn't really that great, and I've heard complaints. All right, I actually got to taste some there last month. We had a medical cannabis patient come down to a protest here in Cork, and she had some of the Bedrocan stuff with me, and it was really had a very amnesia kind of haze kind of a smell to it, but it was very
I mean, it's not terrible, but it's not, it's only suited for like one type of thing really, and they don't have as high strength THC on with an indica or with a more relaxing type strain, and that's what I need. I need that more relaxing, because that is much better for my pain relief than the sativa. So it just doesn't work for me. So it's not something that I would really consider.
Yeah, we've a patient here in Ireland, Alicia Maher, who's stuck actually in Alicante at the moment because of she couldn't get access to cannabis here in Ireland. She emigrated to get access in Alicante, but she now has a license to come back to Ireland to get the Bedrocan cannabis. But she said she's not going to do it because what they have is going to excite her nerves, which will actually stimulate pain rather than numb the pain, which she wants, because she suffers with chronic pain because of a number of issues like that. So again, the regulators, like, they're not listening to patients. They're the patients, the experts really in this, they're being excluded from the drafting of any legislations or policies here in Ireland, which is just very shameful.
Well, I think it's happening everywhere, really, unfortunately. But that's what else is going on right now, is that Professor David Nutt and Drug Science are working on Project 2021, which is a study on cannabis patients to track their consumption of cannabis, their illness, what it does, to provide a big body of data to then hopefully sway some minds in the right direction. So we've got
20,000 patients, is it? For the
aiming for 20,000 patients. By the end of 2021. Hopefully it'll work out. I know it's been going well so far. I think that unfortunately, again, the price is prohibiting some people from being involved, which is really unfortunate. And I don't think that is what anybody intended to happen in the first place. But I think that's just, unfortunately, it was either do it at this low price point and subsidize it, or don't do it at all. So that's what they had to do. So it's unfortunate, but hopefully it will provide a body of data and evidence that can be used to affect policy in the future. Good news is that Billy Caldwell has had his NHS prescription reinstated. Fortunately, Charlotte has had to go through so many hurdles to get that, and it is a testament to her as a campaigner and as a mother that she's managed it. And hopefully it will set precedent for other families and other children to be able to access this medicine too. It's can't even believe that we're even still having this conversation.
I know
I smile, but it's nervous smiling, because it's ridiculous.
Yeah, you feel like banging your head off the wall sometimes. Like you're trying to get through to some of these policymakers that could literally just put pen to paper, and overnight they could turn a person's life right around. Like Charlotte Caldwell, everything, as you said, she had to do tremendous things in order to just get attention by some of these policymakers to thing. And I think the ruling recently was that was it the consultants of Billy said that it's vital that he continues the treatment of medical cannabis, or the cannabis oil that he was on, and that's the only reason that the NHS said that they'd pay it, because I think that the payment that or the agreement she had with the oil provider was kind of running out. So I think it would have been Monday, just gone yesterday, he would have had no medicine had the NHS not approved it there last week.
And when that happened, when he had no medicine in 2018, one day later he started fitting again.
That's right.
So it took him one day last time. So it was really that apparent that this is potentially life saving, because every seizure that Billy has could be his last. So we need to stop every single one of them from happening. as many as possible, and this stops them. So, or reduces them greatly. So this is what he needs. This is what he needs. So fortunately, Charlotte has won. Good on her. Absolute, complete legend. Actually, another memorable moment was being there at the airport the day that Billy and Charlotte came back with their prescription, and all the fuss that went on around that. That was amazing as well. And yeah,
You were there on that day yourself.
I just want to say, and which I think everybody should thank Charlotte for her work, because she could have just hidden it. She could have hidden away. She could have just grown her own, and she could have just, you know,
Yeah.
about the rest of you. I'm just going to treat my son, but she didn't. She's taken this as far as she could, not only for her son, but to set precedent for everybody else's children as well. And amazing lady.
Yeah, fair play to her. And I'd imagine her battle's not over yet. While she might have won it for her son, I'm sure she's going to continue this for the many other kids and patients out there who still are without access to it because of prohibitive costs with the private prescription that's currently in the UK. We've one patient here in Ireland who's paying about €4,000 every 3 months, and he has to go over to Transvaal to The Hague to collect his Bedrocan cannabis and bring it back. Every 3 months he has to incur that cost, and our government won't reimburse that at all for him.
That's not okay.
He started doing his own podcast called the Cannabis Patient Podcast. His name is Kenny Tynan. Suffers. He actually got the I think he got the all clear, or no, not the all clear. Sorry, his tumor is reduced in size there recently, or hasn't gotten bigger. Positive news anyway, and he's going to be with us for a bit longer anyway. He was thinking it might have been terminal, but thankfully he's going to be with us for a bit longer. But you know, there's many patients like himself still are forced. He still breaks the law while he has access to his prescribed medical cannabis. He says, as yourself, the stuff he can get in the black market is a bit better sometimes than the Bedrocan stuff, and it's nice to get that variety in as well. He says because of the resistance that you kind of build up. What is it? Tolerance. Jeez, I couldn't think of the word. The tolerance that you build up to that one strain when you're continuously using it. So he's another guy who's out there just banging that drum, making sure the patients get access to it, much like Charlotte is doing that as well. But it kind of goes back to something that Kenny says too. It's people like myself, you know, not you're suffering with a condition, but I don't have any chronic illness. I haven't been diagnosed with anything at all. But I'll definitely say that I got therapeutic benefit from using cannabis as a younger person. I was I was very impulsive. I didn't think cannabis slowed me down. It made me calmer, and just made me more of able to socialize with people. But people like myself, you know, when I stopped campaigning for recreational cannabis and I got behind the medical cannabis patients that time, while it was a good thing to do, it was also kind of a selfish thing for us to do in certain respects. You know, I wanted to put the medical cannabis patients forward so they can be heard, so they can be getting access to it. So later on, it'd be easier for me to fight my battle then for the recreational thing. And Kenny Tynan kind of says it. He's like, lads, he goes, I'm dying. He's like, I've cancer, lads. I shouldn't be the one out there doing this. Like, he goes, all of you guys out there that are fit and healthy and fine, you know, and you're using cannabis recreationally or therapeutically or holistically, whatever term you want to put in it. He said, lads, you're the ones who should be out in the front line fighting for this, because he said if we were to legalize and regulate cannabis for the wider market, patients would benefit trumps on that, like way above and beyond, because they could walk into a store then and be able to work with a bud tender who would say, oh, I have this sativa, I have this indica, oh, what's your condition? And you know, they're knowledgeable, as opposed to a current situation where the policymakers aren't even working with people like yourself who can educate them and lead them in the right direction.
It's the kind of thing that in a perfect world, I agree, you know, in a perfect world, you know, but unfortunately it's like in a war normally, like the sick and the people that get shot or whatever and they're dying on the battlefield, you wouldn't like send them off to over the trench the next day. And that is essentially what we have to do in this country as patients, and in your country too, all over the world, what patients have to do, because unfortunately not everybody is willing to stand up for somebody else. And I'm privileged to the point where cannabis makes my life just good enough that I can actually do something about it. Not everybody has that luxury. So, you know, we've all got to do what we can do. And it's unfortunate, and patients shouldn't be on the battlefield. We shouldn't, but we are, and we've got to make the most of it. And we've got to get off the battlefield as quickly as possible which is why I think we've got to focus on the medical thing.
Yeah.
Or it's not, you can't say, oh, the recreational lot, they're making us fight the wars for them, whatever. But actually, it isn't about fighting the wars. It's about, let's get this one bit done. Let's get medical cannabis done so that all those sick and dying are off the battlefield, and then you lot can go and have your war for your recreational substance of choice and for what makes you happy. Great, go get them, guys, go get them. You know, but we need to be back, taken off the battlefield, having our medicine, not worrying about this crap. So that's why, you know, I decided to separate and go and do the medical thing, even though I fully am behind recreational. And you're right, it would be better that way. But it wasn't going to happen that way. So
I agree with you. But what I've seen happen here in Ireland over the last couple of years is the medical cannabis proponents, they were being argued against that it was like, oh, some sort of Trojan horse for the recreational market and what have you. Which is, it's terrible like that. The recreational market is being used as an excuse not to allow these patients access to medical cannabis. You know, I've heard certain politicians say it like, oh, if we legalize this for chronic pain, sure, you're going to have every Tom, Dick and Harry going into the doctor tomorrow saying they have a pain in their back and they need a medical cannabis access. Which again, kind of, if it comes back, then it's just like, geez, yeah, it's a balls the recreational market aren't around to kind of step up for themselves and say, hey guys, no, we can get cannabis anyway. Like, you better sort these patients out. Like, honestly, I can go online now. I can go onto Instagram so easily, and there's a vendor up there who I can order cannabis and it'll be delivered to my door next day. I just send him some Bitcoin, and that's how easy it is to get it as a recreational user. But you know yourself, like as a person who needs it for medicinal reasons, your reasons for using it are completely different, and your requirements then of the cannabis are completely different. Like, you need consistency. You don't want to have one day something making you sleepy and the next day something making you bounce around and exciting your nerves and making you actually stimulate your pain. So there's the two different requirements there between the two markets, and you know,
but this is where you will find that the only option for a lot of people is to go, you know what, I'm going to grow my own. Because if I grow my own, then I know exactly what I'm getting. I can grow different strains for different things that I need. I can have one for when I need to sleep. I can have one for when I need to eat, and I can have one for when I'm trying to enjoy myself and have a good time. You know, you can do that when you grow your own, which, you know, you can never guarantee you can get what you need on the black market or with private prescriptions. But that leads me just to want to talk one last thing that is happening at the moment is that, as you know, we do have legal prescriptions in the UK, but they are out of a lot of people's price range. And some people have taken it into their own hands and gone, do you know what? I'm actually going to put those seeds in the ground myself, and I'm going to do it myself because I need to. And unfortunately, we are still living in a country that will prosecute those patients, whether they have the illness that would qualify for a private prescription, but they only have a small amount of money. That amount of money went into a grow setup rather than 1 month's worth of medicine. Yeah. I mean, what would you do, really? What would you do? Would you buy a grow setup, or would you buy one? You know, it was a no-brainer for him. It's called Tony Bevington, and yeah, he was arrested in January. He had 24 plants in Cornwall, and they're prosecuting him. He's an old man. He's in his 80s. He has a terminal kidney diagnosis. So, you know, he's not got that much long left. And what did he do? Well, his biggest crime was to try and alleviate his pain and crippling anxiety from the fact that he's been given a terminal diagnosis by growing a few cannabis plants for himself. And that's all he did. He trusted the police. He got grassed up by his neighbour, trusted the police. The police came round and he showed them, because he was too trusting. He assumed, you know what, I'm not doing anything wrong. These police officers are going to use their discretion. They're going to leave me alone, because all I'm doing is got a few plants for myself so that I'm not sick. And they didn't. They took them all off of him. They arrested him, and then they're taking him to court in November. So we have a long way to go to get to where we need to be, because this is so wrong. If anyone wants to support, there's a Anthony Bevington support group on Facebook that you can join and see the current developments with that case. But it seems it is going to court, and yeah, this is they are taking an 80-year-old man, an 80-year-old granddad to court for growing a few cannabis plants. That is still happening. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a heartbreaker. I know in the UK you have a different situation with your police. You know, they have all
Mm.
different jurisdictions and they
Yeah.
work on like different units. Like you'd always hear things like certain police constabularies, they're not going to enforce this. They're
Mm.
not going to go after the guys who are just
Postcode lottery.
themselves.
Postcode lottery. If you happen to live in the place where you have
Yeah,
chief of police, because we have new police and crime commissioners that are elected. So if the chief at in the area is like, you know what, I don't want to spend any of my budget on getting cannabis criminals, then you're pretty much safe. But if you don't have that, if you have a prohibitionist who's like, we need to enforce the law, rah, 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 rah,
yeah.
you still get it. So he's in Tony's in Cornwall. In Cornwall, they don't have that. So that's that.
And so what is up in November, is it, you said?
And in some places it's completely like in Durham, they've been able to open some cannabis clubs and stuff like that because they've really put it onto the lowest priority and allowed private consumption essentially. But it just depends where you live in this country as to what will happen to you and what the police will do.
I seen Liverpool were on the news recently as some guy up there has gotten permission. Yeah. I don't know what that is. I haven't looked fully into it, but apparently he's opening up a cannabis club again.
Yeah, so Gary actually had a underground cannabis club open for years in Liverpool. UPA did an event in Liverpool actually. One of our biggest turnouts, a good memory. One of our biggest turnouts for an event, and then afterwards we went and met Gary and went to his private cannabis club. It was amazing. There was a band. It was a Friday night, and there was a band playing, and it was like we're in the future, but we're in the past. It was so weird because we're in Liverpool. The band were kind of like the Beatles. They kind of had that vibe going on. We're like, what is going on? Is this the future or is this the past? Huh? But yeah, so he's now doing another one and seems to have been working on getting better permission. Like I think he's been talking to the guys that do a lot of the a bit more above board, and he's opening again soon. So again, that's good progress. Yeah,
that is. It's just mad to think that these two things are going on at the same time. You know, you have your man Anthony Philip Bevington who got raided and has these plans taken off him, and then just over on the other side of the country, you have Gary able to open up his cannabis club. You know, it's just what's going on there. Like, why isn't there like just a consistency across the board from these authorities, you know, especially like for patients. I'm sure like
it's right. Let's be honest, right? And I'm sure many of your viewers will appreciate or not or will hear what I'm saying right now. It's England, it's the UK. We do not do things consistently at all, ever. It's just what happens. It's one person wants to do it that way, another person wants to do it that way, and then they fight for that. It's never just going to be that way or that way. And that's what we're seeing is that in some places, yes, it's way more liberal, it's way more accepted, it's way more understood. They've done the research, they've looked into it, they understand. And in other places, they're blind and they can't see it and they won't open their eyes and they're going to just follow by the book, you know? By the book.
Man, I'm just realizing we're getting close to time and I don't want to keep you. You've a meeting there in a while. I just wanted to finish up and just the coronavirus. Has that affected availability for yourself there since it kicked in?
For me personally, it hasn't. But then I'm quite well connected and well known, I guess, in the community for this and campaigner. So I haven't had any problems at all. But that is definitely not the case for a lot of people. I've seen a lot of people that are really struggling. Black market was harder to get from because of the lockdown, because of you couldn't go anywhere, because the police were stopping people more often if they were out. So that caused a lot of fear. There was problems even with legal prescriptions, and there was uncertainty around whether they were going to be coming in as well, which led Alfie Dingley's mother, what's her name? I should know her name. Hannah Deacon, to write to the government to try and ensure access. And Dominic Raab responded with, "Cannabis is evil," and you know the rhetoric of Harm's community is like, how can you conflate a mother asking for her sick child's medicine with people smoking a joint in the street or it's just ridiculous. It's not what the letter was about, and to try and this is what they try and do. They try and make it that. So yeah. But yeah, so they did respond, not politely, but there hasn't been too much. But I think the biggest problem for private prescriptions has been a lot of people were fundraising for them, right? So people would open a Just Giving or whatever, like help our son, help our whatever, help our daughter get access to this medicine, and then people would give. But then coronavirus has kicked in, the economy's gone downhill, people don't have the money they used to have, and these fundraising things just don't get any money in now, nothing, because nobody's got it spare. And then even those who could afford the private prescriptions beforehand, maybe they've gone on furlough, they're not getting quite as much money as they were. Maybe they've been made redundant because there's a big downturn in the economy. So loads of people who were privileged enough to have access to it through the money they had now can't, because they don't have as much money anymore. So, you know, it's been bad for a lot of people across the board, be it black market, be it growing your own, because people are more at home. So people are smelling and dobbing in more home growers as well. So it's been bad across the board.
I think one positive thing that's happened over here because of it, like while we had the same effect on availability, a lot of people's sources dried out. What I'm hearing from the grow stores is there's never been more demand now for growing equipment. They're very busy, which is a good thing. Like it
is a good thing.
More people to grow their own distance.
But it also comes with those risks, which Tony is going through right now, and nobody wants that to happen to them. You know, so it shouldn't be. Yeah, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be happening. It shouldn't be happening. I think growing your own is probably the best way for patients to ensure they've always got access. But at the same time, not everybody can do that. So it's one of those things, really, isn't it? Like I think I've heard that too. I've heard that there's a lot of people who are, you know what, that's enough is enough. Like there's no other option now. So that's what they're going to do. So hopefully in a few months' time, we'll see some very, very, very nice quality buds on patients' Instagrams.
Yeah, excellent. And can I ask similar question actually is the effects of the coronavirus that it's having on campaigning for legalization and stuff. Do you think that it's changing the political will or the pressure being put on?
Honestly, no. But only because Brexit did that before it, and then it's just replaced Brexit as doing that. So that was already happening because of Brexit, because no politician here can do anything other than figure out that or talk about coronavirus. So that's all that's in the papers. That was all that was what being talked about, and there was not as much will to do this and to work on it. No, so it has had an effect, but I think it would be true to say that of everything.
Yeah, of course, across the board, everything has been affected by it. Yeah, definitely. And I suppose just to finish off, the 2021, the study that's happening, there has been no talk of the commencement date of that, is there?
No, wait. Some patients are already getting their medicine and already on the study, so patients can sign up to it, and it's already happening. Yeah, they haven't got the 20,000 patients they're recruiting to get there, but I believe there's already a significant amount of people currently getting their medicine through that scheme. So
excellent. I wasn't even aware that had started. I can remember when they were announcing it at the time, and I was very intrigued by it, to the point I was almost thinking of trying to apply for a position in the college to do some studying with them on it, because I have an honours degree in herbal science myself, and I'd love to go on and do more research, but at the same time, having a young family, it's very hard to leave Ireland. So I'll be going back to college now in December, and hopefully I'll be able to focus my studies there again to advance the field of medical cannabis. But until then, I suppose we'll just keep on doing this thing. Is there anything else you want to throw out there, Clark, before I leave you get on about the rest of your day?
I think other than just say thanks for having me on, and thanks for the people for always listening and for tuning in and for fighting this fight with us. I think it's all happens because there's a collective of people all fighting in the same and similar directions. We don't always have to agree on everything, but as long as we get on with our work, I think we can make this world that a little bit better. So I would just last word was to encourage everybody that's listening to just do their bit, just get involved, write to your politicians, wherever you are, wherever you're listening from, write to your politicians. The power of people can change the world.
Yeah, brilliant. Come here, thanks very much for giving me your time today. It was an absolute pleasure to sit and talk with you. And thanks very much as well for reminding me of Anthony Philip Bevington's case that's ongoing in the UK. I think more and more people now need to get behind him and to help him in any way that they can. So, Clark, thanks very much for your time. And I look forward to meeting up with you and having more chats into the future.
Yeah.
And until then, take care.
Well, brilliant. And thank you for all of your work as well. Well, we'll speak to you soon. Take care.
Clark, enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.